and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, it's nice to be back out in the sun. We're all excited about spring and everything. But here's the problem. The weeds in your field are also excited. And a lot of times you get going, you're ready to start planting, or maybe you've got the crop in the ground, but it hasn't come up yet. And you're thinking about, hey, maybe I should do a burn down with herbicide in my corn or my soybeans. But what should I use? Well, we're going to talk about that today.
Well, I like killing weeds that are up, but I prefer to kill weeds, as some people say, while they're sleeping. I like to kill them when they're still below the soil surface. We're going to talk about pre-emerge herbicides for soybeans. We've got a different strategy than pretty much anybody else in the country, and it works better. Imagine that. So we're going to share that strategy with you so you can put it into play on your farm this year.
We've got one of the toughest to control weeds of the week coming up later in the show. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about something that affects every farmer out there. It's the carbon to nitrogen ratio. Now, if you're a non-farmer, you're probably saying, carbon to nitrogen ratio, what are you even talking about here? Well, it has to do with the residue, the plant residue that's left in the field from last year's crop and what's going to affect this year's crop, and especially the nitrogen that crop needs.
Well, there's really two things that we're talking about here. Number one is crop rotation. If you're coming off of a soybean crop, for example, and going into corn, it's a whole different situation than if you're in a continuous corn operation. And I think if you've ever done continuous corn, you really understand what I'm talking about there. The other side of it is the tillage and how much residue is up on top of the ground. So if it's soybean residue versus corn residue, that does make a big difference. But when you've got just tons of corn stalk residue or wheat straw residue on top of the soil and you're going to go no-till, this carbon to nitrogen ratio really becomes important.
So here's what it really comes down to. If the carbon to nitrogen ratio is too high, and the number is a little debatable, Darren and I were talking about that right before the show, we believe the number is somewhere around 16 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen. If the ratio is higher than that, so let's say it's 40 to 1, 80 to 1, something like that. If a farmer goes out and sprays more nitrogen on, thinking, well, that's going to be available for my corn crop or for my wheat crop, nope, not going to happen. What ends up happening is some of that nitrogen gets tied up in the residue until that ratio gets down below 16 to 1. So if we had a ratio of, let's say, 10 to 1 carbon to nitrogen, pretty much any nitrogen a farmer would apply would be available for the crop. So that's really what it amounts to, this carbon to nitrogen ratio. When we've got high carbon residue, that's a problem because it, in effect, ties up some of the nitrogen that we apply.
What we've really got going on is we've got soil microbes, soil bacteria that are going to break down these stalks or this residue from last year's crop and break it down back into the nutrients that it's comprised of. This is a good thing. I mean, this is how nature works. We break down, the dead grass in your lawn or the corn stalks from last year's crop. We turn them back into nutrients. We release those nutrients for the next crop that's going to be raised in that soil. So when we think about this, these bacteria, they need some protein out there. They need the nitrogen portion plus what they're going to get out of the corn stalks to make the proteins that they need. So when they need to break down high carbon residue, they've got to have nitrogen to be able to do it. A good example would be your lawn. If you go out and put a good shot of nitrogen fertilizer on your lawn's going to green up pretty quick. It's going to look dark green. It's going to look better than the neighbors. But have you ever noticed that sometimes when you put on fertilizer, it gives you a quick response? Other times you say, man, it doesn't really look like I did much out there. And then a few weeks later, then it really kicks in. One of the big differences is if you're saving your lawn clippings. This is very much like farmers that are leaving the residue from their crop out in the field. If you're cutting the clippings, taking them away, bagging them up, hauling them off, now you put nitrogen fertilizer on, well, all those soil microbes, they don't have all this residue to break down, so that nitrogen just becomes available for the current grass that's growing. But if there's all these clippings and everything that's still out there, you have to break that stuff down. So it's the same thing in the farm as in your lawn, as in your garden. We're concerned about this carbon to nitrogen ratio just for our knowledge to know, hey, if we're putting on fertilizer, it's going to take a little while before it comes available. If the soil microbes have to use that, to break down the previous residue.
And the problem for farmers is if it takes too long for it to come available, it doesn't do any good for this year's crop. So that's why for continuous corn farmers, they need to apply more nitrogen each year because it's usually 2 or 3 years before they end up getting that nitrogen back into the system. So anytime there's high carbon residue, farmers will apply more nitrogen, but don't get worried. It's not going to hurt the environment or anything like that. It's going to get bound up in all that carbon until that carbon to nitrogen ratio flips.
And it's eventually going to become food for the plant. So it is a good thing. It's just, it takes a little bit of time for it all to work. Well, one other thing that may take a little bit of time on your ground is controlling our weed of the week. We'll explain why coming up later in the show.
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield tray. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
Capello corn headers are designed for producers who expect more. Expect more grain in your bin. Expect an industry-leading 2-year manufacturer's warranty. Expect Capello-designed chopping and folding options that save you time and money. And whether red, green, or yellow, expect row size options that fit your operation because all producers deserve the best. Expect Capello. It's a head above the rest.
Can I grow my crop without the expense of fertilizer additives?
You can. Conditions forcing you to make some tough choices? Choose agricultural liquid fertilizers and you won't need stabilizers or nutrient managers, eliminating expense and hassle. Millions of acres and years of replicated research have proven that with ProGerminator, SureK, High Energy and MicroLink, you can grow a great crop without costly additives. To learn more and find a dealer near you, visit agroliquid.com.
You can put more bushels in your bin without expanding the farm with YieldTrack. The new 24-row planter from Titan Machinery features the Case IH Early Riser planting system. YieldTrack will take you to the field first with extra flotation come spring. The tracks eliminate pinched rows and reduce compaction. All 22 and 30-inch YieldTracks come loaded with Case IH technology, including cable drive and AccuRow. Grab more bushels from every acre with YieldTrack from Titan Machinery.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
What are you going to do for a burn down in your crop this spring? Well, whether you have corn or soybeans, the key is that you start clean. So whether you're doing that with tillage or with herbicide, whatever it is, we just want to make sure that when that crop emerges, there are no weeds out there. It's going to make things so much easier for all the rest of the season.
Well, you talk about just starting clean. I think the important thing is making sure we start clean without damaging our crop with whatever it took to start clean. Let's just take 2,4-D for example, because to me, that's a real common culprit. You know, with 2,4-D, if we're spraying that out ahead of corn, it's okay to some degree, but we've got to have a good length of time in front of when we're going to be planting corn. If you're going to spray 2,4-D out in front of soybeans, it's going to be a disaster some years. Now, there may be a few years that, you know what, the weather was just right, there were lots of weeds out there, it used up the 2,4-D, it completely broke down before the beans started germinating and there was no problem at all. But more times than not, we end up with issues, whether it's we completely kill soybeans or we just ding them up enough that instead of getting 60 bushel beans, we get 55 bushel beans. And in the fall, if you get 55, you say, well, you know, I was shooting for 60, but maybe we didn't have good enough weather or maybe we didn't have a timely rain. You don't really know what took 5 bushels off your yield. But in the meantime, you lost $50 an acre out there because you tried to save a couple of bucks on a burn down application.
Well,
so I'd be very
but it's not
cautious
so
with
much
2,4-D.
as saving a couple bucks, Darren. It comes down to tough weeds like a mare's tail, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show when we get into our 3 Pre program with soybeans. But the whole thing is, if you're going to go out with 2,4-D, you have to have lots of time before you plant. And it's different where you farm. In the northern area of the country, there's absolutely no way I'd ever use 2,4-D in front of my corn or in front of my soybeans in the spring. If I farmed down south and I was going to go out in January and spray 2,4-D and come back in late March or early April, I may consider using some 2,4-D if I had a 2-month gap there where I'm going to have a bunch of 70 and 80 degree days. We just don't get that in the northern part of the country. So we just are really, really concerned about you using 2,4-D at all ever in a burn down in front of any crop. It's just too hard on things a lot of times. What we would suggest instead is switch over to Banville with corn. On the soybean side, use some combination things. Use some Valor or Authority plus some Metribuzin plus some fertilizer. The main thing is we just want to make sure you're not using something that can potentially hurt your crop.
But you do need something that's going to be fairly strong out there. And depending on what weeds you're going after, let's take the broadleaf weeds for example. If you've got some winter annual weeds, they got to start last fall. They've got a big root system underneath them, and they are as much actively growing out in the field as anything. You may have some spring annuals that are just getting started, but these winter annuals are ready to run.
All right, so let's talk specifically then in corn. What do you suggest in corn for a burn down?
Well, if you've got big winter annuals, like let's say mare's tail, for example, you've got some big shepherd's purse, pennycress, those types of weeds, I really prefer using some dicamba. I would just as soon use a generic Banvel at this point, or if you want to spend the money on Status, you sure can.
Status is sold out, not going to work. It's too expensive anyway to use before
it
that
works,
corn is
it works
in the ground.
better than dicamba, but like you say, it is a little more spendy. I'd probably go cheap since I'm not in crop. I don't need the safe
Okay, so in other words, Banville and then Sharpen would be probably the next best thing.
Well, yes, but you can buy your Sharpen relatively cheap by going through Verdict. That way you're also getting your residual with some Outlook in there too. So you could go straight Sharpen if you want to, but I would prefer to go Verdict plus some Banville.
Okay, so certainly you can use Roundup as a burn down, but there are a lot of these weeds becoming Roundup resistant. Even if you throw Roundup out there as a burn down for corn, we would suggest throwing Banville and or Sharpen along with it.
Now the other thing with that too is you can throw in a crop oil, a methylated seed oil, liquid fertilizer. You could use liquid fertilizer as your carrier. All those things are going to add to the speed of your burn. So if we're talking about annual weeds, that's a good thing. You'll fry them down quicker. That should be good for this year's crop. If we're talking about perennial weeds though, then we're looking at a high rate of Roundup that's going to get down into that root system and kill the weed root and all.
Okay, let's switch gears, talk about soybeans just a little bit. This is the much tougher one because obviously today you can't use Banville or 2,4-D right at planting time. Hopefully in a couple years when we have dicamba and 2,4-D tolerant soybeans, it's going to be awesome. We're going to have much better burn down options. We just don't have those today. So what we would suggest is using a high rate of Roundup, throw that along with Valor or Authority plus Metribuzin, that's the old Sencor. Now, I would say this, with Metribuzin, if your soil pH is above 7.4, you're gonna have to cut the rate back a little bit, okay? Or even if you have real sandy ground, you're gonna have to cut the rate back a little bit from the normal 1/3 of a pound. Cut it back a little bit, you should be fine. One other thing you can do if you've got Roundup resistant weeds is to use Gramoxone as a replacement for Roundup in a burn down situation. Just remember, Gramoxone has to be used before any crop comes up. It's going to burn everything down. It's not going to kill the roots very well, but at least it will burn everything down and it'll burn it down quickly. Those are the real keys. Those are the best burn down products. Plus, you can consider throwing some methylated seed oil, some fertilizer, something like that with it to heat it up even more.
Now the one thing that I would say too, we talked about Sharpen just a little bit. We love it in front of corn. We love it in front of wheat. In soybeans, you just can't use a high enough rate. We'll probably get into that as the show goes on today. So yes, that is an option, but when you can only use 1 ounce, you really don't get that much burn down activity on the big winter annuals. If you had just small 1-inch tall annual weeds, yes, you'd get a sufficient burn down, but not as much residual as things we'll talk about later on.
Once again, it kind of comes back to if you're after the annual weeds, we can get a lot of burn on them, especially adding some fertilizer, the crop oil or methylated seed oil, those types of things. But for the perennials, just like we said with the corn, we'd prefer to have you run with the highest labeled rate of Roundup, do a nice strong shot of Roundup, and you should have better luck getting down into those deep root systems of the perennial weeds. So it really depends on what you're after. Let's take dandelion, for example. So if all you're trying to do is just burn the top growth off, which a lot of times may be enough, then you can run with a program like we just talked about, Metribuzin, Valor or Authority, Roundup at maybe a quart or something like that, along with some fertilizer. Boy, you got a lot of stuff in there that's going to burn. If you wanted great long-term control on the dandelions, so hopefully they'll never come back again, then I'd run with a half a gallon of Roundup Power Max before I planted my soybeans.
Whatever the max labeled rate is. And here's really where the problem comes, Brian, because a lot of times if guys have a little bit of grass coming, maybe it's green foxtail, yellow foxtail, something like that, and then you've got just a sprinkling of broadleaves out there, guys will say, well, man, I can wipe out that grass with 16 ounces of Power Max, Weather Max really easy, but that's not even close to enough for these broadleaves because they have so many growing points, even at a 2 to 4 inch tall plant.
Yep, and here's the other problem. It's cool in the spring. If you're going to spray when the weather's cool, the stuff just isn't going to work very well. Even Banville, we've used Banville at a pint and it hasn't worked in some cases when we're out there spraying when the weather had been cold for a week, was cold when we sprayed, stayed cold for a couple days afterward. That's just not a good combination. Ideally, here's what we'd like to see. Nighttime temps above 50 degrees 2 days before and 2 days after spraying. If you've got that, chances are you have enough heat to get things going. So just understand, we want the weeds actively growing. We'd like to have the weather a little warmer. You'll have a lot better success that way.
Well, burning down the weeds is certainly an important part of starting clean in the spring, but staying clean all season is going to be tough when you have our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?
The math for getting higher yield potentials is simple. 4 is greater than 2. Steiger Rotrax Series tractors give you proven Case IH Quadtrac technology, helping you cover more acres in less time. And with 4 independent oscillating tracks, you'll also minimize ground pressure and compaction for a better growing environment, all of which adds up to higher potential yields. The world of farming is changing. Be ready with Case IH.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
I will take action against herbicide-resistant weeds. I will know my weeds, and I will stop them before they go to seed. I will do whatever it takes to give my crops the upper hand, and I will use multiple herbicide sites of action because every action counts. I will take action, this time for all time.
I wish I could side dress more than just nitrogen.
You can. While side dressing is efficient for nitrogen applications, you can also use that opportunity to apply PK and the micronutrients your crop needs. AgroLiquid's Calibrate and MicroLink products allow you to nutritionally balance your side dress application efficiently and economically. Let Agricultural Liquid Fertilizer help you make your next crop a bumper crop. For more info, visit agroliquid.com.
If you watch Ag PhD TV, you'll love the new Ag PhD radio show each weekday on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80. This is Darren Hefty. On the new Ag PhD radio program, we'll take live callers and provide the agronomic information and brotherly banter you've come to expect from Ag PhD. We'll feature a Back 40 segment where we talk to farmers and agronomists around the country to share what's going on with crop production. And it wouldn't be Ag PhD without addressing a pest of the day. Tune in to the Ag PhD radio show each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80.
One of our favorite things to talk about in the last couple of years has been to use 3 pre-emerge herbicides in soybeans. And right away you might say, whoa, Brian and Darren, what are you guys talking about? I don't want to put 3 products down in front of soybeans. Why would I do 3? Well, the reason why is because the post-emerge products stink. They're terrible. If we've got Roundup resistant weeds, are you really going to come back and count on Cobra or Flexstar or First Rate to wipe out all your weeds season long? I mean, think back 20 years ago when you switched to Roundup beans. Why did you do it? Because all the post-emerge products, I mean, yeah, they're okay to kill some weeds today, but they're not perfect. They don't give you enough residual. They're just not great. So that's why you switched over in the first place. Well, guess what? There are no new products in 20 years. You're going to have to go back to all those same old products if you have Roundup resistant weeds and you don't do a good job with the pre-emerge herbicides.
Well, a big term that you need to be aware of on your farm is site of action. What site in the plant these chemicals are going after and where they're going to be doing their work. So by choosing products with different sites of action, you can hit that plant in the knees, and then you can hit him in the stomach, and then you can hit him in the shoulders, and you can hit him in different spots, and we avoid resistance issues. And if we ever have resistance to one of those products, chances are the other two are going to come in and knock it out.
Well, Darren, I want to hit him in the face and knock him out for good. So that's what we're trying to do with this program, and I think I can do that if I use 3 pre's. So here's what we'd like you to do. Use one of the yellows, that's Sonalan, Treflan, or Prowl, plus use a PPO, either Authority or Valor. Don't use Sharpen because you can't use enough to get season-long residual in soybeans. You just can't use that much or it hurts the soybean, so use Valor or Authority, then use Metribuzin. So a yellow, a PPO, and Metribuzin. Do those 3 things. You should be able to get 99.9% control on water hemp, Palmer pigweed, kochia, lamb's quarters, red root pigweed, most of the Roundup resistant weeds that we see out there.
Well, it's definitely the best strategy to controlling those weeds because post-emerge, our choices really aren't very good. We can't get 99 to 100% control. So if we can wipe them out ahead of time, now if there's an escape, it's just a weed here and a weed there. It's easier to get coverage on them. And really, it's realistic to think we can get them with our post products if they're just one here and there and not thick patches out in the field.
Hey, one quick thing too as a substitution if you want. If you're in an area that's starting to get a resistant Palmer pigweed to the DNAs, to the yellows, the Prowl, Treflan, Sonalan, just switch that out with Zidua. Zidua is a whole different family. It's similar to Harness, Surpass, Outlook, and Dual.
And one last question, Brian, because we hear this a lot. Can I spray all 3 at the same time?
Yep.
Or should I spread them out?
Yes, you can spray all 3 at the same time. That's typically what we're doing on our farm. If you want to spread them out, that's fine. The other thing is people get concerned about, well, they say to leave Valor and Authority on top of the soil surface. Look, we've incorporated them, works fine. But if you want to lay everything on the soil surface, use Prowl instead of Treflan or Sonalan. Prowl's the product of those yellows that can be used in no-till or strip-till. Treflan and Sonalan have to be instantly incorporated.
And of course, Metribuzin, Valor, and Authority can be laid on the soil surface too.
Yes. Well, once again, we just strongly advise you to consider putting 3 pre-emerge herbicides down in your soybeans if you're having problems with Roundup resistant weeds on your farm. And if you have our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to stop it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Your farm tells a story, one that continues with the decisions you make. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our Weed of the Week is one of the toughest ones that we face today across the United States. It's Johnsongrass.
Well, it's often listed as one of the 10 toughest weeds in the world to control. And you say, wait a minute, it's a grass? How can that be the toughest one? Well, if you're asking that question or making that statement, you definitely don't have Johnsongrass. It is a perennial that can reproduce either by seeds or by rhizomes. It's been found to be Roundup resistant in many areas. Also, it's been found to be ALS resistant. And you think about it, wait, what can I use to get down into the root system of a perennial plant if Roundup doesn't work and I can't use any of the ALSs? That makes it tough.
Yeah, that is definitely going to make it difficult when it's Roundup and ALS resistant. But let's talk about it just a little bit more because first of all, not all Johnsongrass is Roundup and ALS resistant. If it's not, obviously we would like to see you use Roundup at a real high rate, and that's one of the keys here. A lot of these weeds build up resistance because we don't use the strong rate that we probably should to completely kill every plant.
Sub-lethal rates. So let's just take Roundup off the table and the ALS herbicides off the table. What will actually kill Johnsongrass? You know, when we look at it, we can use these pre-emerge herbicides and they can hold it back, but they aren't going to be perfect because we're dealing with a perennial weed.
Okay, in soybeans, I'd recommend Treflan, Sonalan, or Prowl. Use a high rate. Also, tillage can help you a little bit with this weed. In corn, yeah, Dual, Outlook, Harness, Surpass, they're just not going to be very good. Post-emerge, I like Accent and Beacon, but if it's ALS resistant, it's just not going to be great. So we just don't have a lot of options. A lot of guys have been switching to Liberty soybeans, Liberty corn. That would be one way to at least burn down the top growth.
With Gramoxone, we could spray that in a burn down
And again,
too,
burn
get
down the top growth
control. But like I say, you just have to stay after it, hit it multiple times.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, Johnsongrass, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrek technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
When soils are wet in the spring, how do you handle them? In today's Iron Talk, I'll give you a trick that many farmers are using in their lower, wetter, poorly drained ground to try to overcome the compaction issues they may face from spring tillage. If your ground is flat, poorly drained, sticky, or all of the above, here's something you may consider. Doing some light tillage to dry things out is a common practice. The downside is pretty well known too. You can create compaction at about the depth of that tillage. Now, it seems like the only way you can get into those fields, though, is doing some tillage. So what do? Do you just wait for them to dry up another week or longer before they're truly ready, or do you get out there and work? Well, here's a couple of things you may think about. Using a Quadtrek can certainly help reduce the compaction that your tractor creates, but the smear level just below the soil surface is really unavoidable with things like a field cultivator. However, if you run that field cultivator shallow so that smear level is actually above the seed, well, when you plant, your furrow openers will actually create a slice through that smear level, leaving a clear path up for your young seedlings. Believe me, I understand the right way to do it is just to wait until the soil is ready. But sometimes when you're getting out there late and you're choosing between prevent plant and actually getting a crop in, you do need to get going. So just keep your tillage shallow enough that it's above the seed depth, and then you can cut through it with your row openers. That's one way that many farmers are trying to get by this year, just to get something in the ground. Well, that's all the time we have for today's Iron Talk, but there's more Ag PhD coming up right after this.
Capello corn headers are designed for producers who expect more. Expect more grain in your bin. Expect an industry-leading 2-year manufacturer's warranty. Expect Capello design chopping and folding options that save you time and money. And whether red, green, or yellow, expect row size options that fit your operation, because all producers deserve the best. Expect Capello. It's a head above the rest.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
If you could see how nitrogen loss causes yield loss, you'd fix it. So fix it right, with the stabilizer proven to reduce all 3 ways nitrogen escapes. Nutrisphere N Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager. It keeps nitrogen in a more readily available form longer. With today's market and environment, it's a high priority to keep your nitrogen on track. To higher yield with Nutrisphere N.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show, but we invite you to join us each weekday on Ag PhD Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80. Darren and I host a live show at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, where we take your phone calls and we talk about agronomic issues.
And be sure to join us next week for Ag PhD TV, where we'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Why are many farmers reducing tillage? Reduced tillage has shown to increase soil's organic matter levels, reduce erosion potential, improve soil structure, and increase microbial activity and soil life. For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.